Good morning. So I got up this morning and it was freezing outside. And I'm from up north originally, the Philadelphia area, but since I arrived here in Thanksgiving, I got a little spoiled. So I thanked the 8:15 service. I said, if it's always this cold, well, good job for getting up so early every single morning. But it still is cold, so great job everybody for getting through that, not to show up here for work. So it's ironic that I'm up here this morning because you asked me a year ago if I would stand in front of all of you and actually feel like I'd be able to speak about things just about my life basically. I would laugh at you and I would say, there just isn't a chance. You know, there is not anything that would get me out there. And the reason I say that is because I've had a struggle all of my life. And I've really struggled with that in every aspect of my life. And, you know, as a child with a stutter, it was just embarrassing. And I would struggle in school or at home or socially, and I would think that I failed all the time, all sorts of things. And that was, you know, with my friends, or with my family, or in my relationship with God, because when I went to church, I found that a lot of the things that you have to do at church are, you know, you open up the Bible, and you have to say things out loud, you have to read from the Bible out loud. Man, I was horrible at that, and I would stutter, and I would get stuck, and I would feel like that was just horrible, and it was embarrassing, and I hated it. So it really held me back in my relationship with God because I never involved myself in different things around the church. Even though I was there every Sunday, I was always afraid of that, you know, another step and going on the missions and things like that, because I knew that if you go there, you have to sit in a circle and introduce yourself. And man, I hated introducing myself, so I struggled with just the sound of my name. I get stuck and I would feel embarrassed, and then I would sing something again and I wouldn't be able to sing that person. And that was hard on me for a long time, and I found that if I had control over the situation, I would have a little more success over that situation. So in every aspect of my life, I would look at it and I would say, well, how can I have control over situations in school? Well, I would study a little bit harder at home because at least I would understand the material and show up in school and at least feel like I had happiness. And socially, around my family, around my friends, I learned that, you know, if I listened, if I observed, at least I would understand what was going on. And I would feel like I could at least interact in that fashion because I understood that. And that has helped me so much throughout my life because I got the work ethic back then. Not because I was necessarily interested in succeeding in school, but because I was interested in feeling like I could succeed in front of others and have that sort of control. And athletically, I found that I really enjoyed the fact that I was out in front of other folks on the soccer field or out on the baseball field. And that was great. I really enjoyed it because I was out there, they could see me, and I was succeeding at something, and I didn't have to speak in front of them. So that was great. And I had a gift on that. So I wasn't exactly sure that I could, you know, ask everybody to head into the huddle and give them a speech about how, hey guys, we need to go out this afternoon. You guys are great. Except I knew that if I showed up early, if I hung around afterwards and helped other guys out, if I worked really hard, that's how I could be a leader on the athletic field. And that helped me a lot in high school. And finally, as a senior, I was accepted academically up to the school I love, the school of my mom and dad. That's the spot that they met. My grandparents, they lived there, my great. I guess in short, all my family has always gone there. And so I head up, I was in Nittany Lion. I went up to Penn State, and I was so excited. I wasn't on scholarship on the baseball team, but I was on the baseball team. That first fall, I wasn't in control. I didn't feel like I was in control, so I approached it exactly how I had for all of my life. And I said, I'm going to outwork everybody here. And I did, and I was able to make the team. And that spring, as we were, you know, heading down south for opening week and everything, I was so excited. And I was so sure that I had succeeded because I had worked so hard, because it was me. Because I was really successful within myself. And a week and a half before the season started, I found out that I had surgery on my shoulder, my throwing shoulder, and I was out for the whole season. And I was crushed. Everything just absolutely stopped in my life because that was my life. And that was everything that I saw about my success, my control of who I was strictly from that athletic sort of an idea. And I was angry at myself. I didn't understand, you know, how could this happen with me? I worked really hard, I deserved this. And I was angry at myself and I was embarrassed. I felt like I had failed my family, my hometown, my friends, and I was angry at God. And I was angry at God because as long as things were going really well in my life, I was like, well, I'm really successful. I'm a great guy, and this is me. But then as soon as things stopped and slowed down, all of a sudden it was, well, how can this happen to me, God? Why are you doing this? And I was really angry. And finally, it was a friend who, there was an evening, and I won't ever forget this. I was at my house, I was at home, and he asked if I could head outside with him. And I said, sure. It was in the nighttime. I'm outside in the driveway with him, and he hit me in my chest, and he said, what are you doing? This is an idol that you have before God, before your family, before everything that's in your life as a gift. And you think that athletics is important to you? You think that that is how you'll succeed through God in your life? Well, you're wrong. You have so many other opportunities in your life, and they are the gifts of God, and you're forgetting about that. And that's a disservice for you, for your family, and for everyone else out there who you can share that with. And I heard him that night, and it was hard for me because, again, it's this idea of having control of my life. And I still have that. I still have that. But I heard him, and slowly it was able to come through. And I learned that, it wasn't all that. And so I had the surgery, and I was out the whole season, and I went through, and I was an athlete there, and I was successful enough. And as a senior, academically, I still had a season of eligibility. And I was looking around for a reason that I could hang around basically at the university so that I could have that fifth season of eligibility. And I hadn't ever stopped and thought, I need to work on my stutter or anything like that because I was still in control of that. I always, even after that, I said, I'm succeeding academically with my family, with my friends. I'm involved in church, but not really involved. I would tell folks would know me, but that was about it. So as I was looking around, I found a Master's of Health Administration at school there, and I was looking at it, and it said it stressed speaking in front of others. And I thought, well, here's an opportunity for me. I can improve on this now if I apply and I'm accepted. I can do that, and I'll improve. And it was this idea that, if you throw yourself against the wall, eventually you're going to get through that wall, which I think if any of you have experienced that, it's not a great attitude to have of your problems. Often there's an easier way. And so I did that, though, and I applied and I was accepted. And the funny thing about it is that it was on the 8th floor of the building, and so I went through there every single day, and on the first floor, as you walked in the doors, speech therapy was on the left for the university. And I walked through there every single morning, and I would look at it, and I was like, I don't need that. I'm successful. It's fine. Cool. My life is under control exactly how it is. That's fine. So I would walk up the elevator, and I would be in school every single day. And for a year I did that, and I was really successful in school. Athletically, I was the captain of the baseball team. Again, I had this idea of, this is it. This is it for me. This is great. I love this. This is me. And finally, after a year of that, in the fall of my second school year, I had a professor who sat me down, and he said, you're going to be fine how you are. It's okay. That's all it is. It's okay. Because if you open yourself up and you allow yourself, to admit that you don't actually have control 100% of your life, and there are others who have a little more expertise, specifically in the area of fluency, that could help you out. And so that was God in the same fashion as my friend outside of my house was God. After years and years and years of allowing myself to think that I'm in control, that was my friend saying, you're not in control, that's God. And that was him, I believe, in that evening. And that afternoon, when I was sitting down with my professor, saying, hey, I think that you should head into for therapy. So that was God after a year of softening me up, basically, and just having it in the back of my head, there it is, baby, there it is. Okay, and you go, okay, sure, every single day. And finally, he picked the exact moment in which I would open up and say, okay, I can do this. And it was hard for me to admit that I wasn't in control and actually show up for therapy. And yet I did, and it helped me so much. And it helped me for my fluency, it certainly did. I learned a lot of things, but also, more importantly, it helped me because I figured out that, I was looking at it all wrong. I looked at it as a negative thing. I looked at it as, I'm somebody who has a stutter, and through that, it's embarrassing, I would hide it. And I would say, if they find out that I have a stutter, they'll think that I'm stupid or slow or something like that. But actually was the opposite, because I'm someone who stutters, and that's just who I am. And if they don't have any idea that I stutter, then they don't have any idea who I am anymore, because it's an important aspect of my life. And that allowed me at that point to start thinking about, okay, which are the areas of my life which I have shied away from? And the first thing that was there was my relationship with God and my interactions with Him in the church and outside of the church. So I decided, after I was finished with school, that the first thing that I would search for was a church that I could actually become active in. And I wasn't sure exactly what that meant or how to do that or anything, so I ended up down here. I'm in the Air Force now. I work at the Eglin Hospital Administration. And the first thing that I was interested in was finding a church and actually finding someplace that I could, help out, however that would be. I had no idea. So I go up the street, and I was going to Methodist up the street in the morning, and I searched for the services online, the evening before, and I had no idea what was going on. And I saw an 11 o'clock, and I went, and they don't have an 11 o'clock there, and I had no idea how this happened. But I got there, and there was nobody there, so I hung a U-turn, and I drove back, and I saw a sign outside of this church. And I said, well, they have an 11 o'clock, I guess. So, and the thing is, I wouldn't have come here for weeks and weeks, I'm sure. And I'm not even sure at all if I hadn't accidentally thought that they had an 11 o'clock and then ended up here. Because I just wouldn't have, I don't think. And that was God right there saying, hey, you think you have a plan, you think you're under control, you think you look things up, but that's okay, because your plan is kind of secondary to my plan. I supersede you in that. And so I sat down, and the first thing that happens at this church is the pastor comes up and says, hey, if you're new, introduce yourself. Why don't you stand up? And that is the worst thing that could happen. All my life, that is the situation that I have tried to avoid. Every situation, whether I'm, out at a restaurant meeting people, at work, or anything. And that's the exact situation where I go, ooh, you introduce me, or, I do anything at all to not have to say my first name, basically. And all of a sudden, here I am, someplace I wasn't expecting to be, in a situation which I was truly uncomfortable. And all of a sudden, I felt sure that I could do it. And I felt I was just right there, and I heard everybody introduce themselves over here, and as everybody's introducing themselves, I'm like, you know what, I can do this. I'm sure that I can do this. And I stood up and I introduced myself, and I was fluent and I was fine, and I said, I'm looking for a church. And everyone applauded. I don't know how many people were here that Sunday, but everyone's applauding as I sit back down, and I thought, wow, this is incredible. And I'm sure that everyone was applauding because it's great when somebody's in a new area, they're not friends with anyone there, and they just show up at some place and they say, I'm looking for a church. And that's great, and I agree, that is absolutely great. But for me, again, that was God. And I heard that in the applause, and I heard that in your open arms, and me feeling like, I found some place which I can start, interacting with others at the church and having that success. And then after the service, I sat, with the pastor for 45 minutes, and fairly early on in the conversations I was having with him, it became fairly obvious that he was a guy who was really looking, to get everybody after him. I think that a lot of you have had that experience with Pastor Marco. And again, that's exactly the thing I needed in my life. And because I was in those situations, through God, I was able to get that. And I'm so excited about how, I have this opportunity now, and I can actually become active and start helping others in a fashion that I haven't in the past. And I'm so excited about that. So I think that a lot of us, or all of us, have these obstacles in our lives, which we see, and often, we stop and we think, and we say, this is horrible. How come I have this in my life, or this happened? This is really bad. And I've experienced that all throughout my life with the stutter, and yet if you look at it as an opportunity, and each of those opportunities, and how can I grow stronger through this? And grow stronger in my relationship with God through this obstacle, or this experience. That's how we grow in our relationships. And that's how, we get these opportunities that are fulfilling in our lives. So, I think it's with the first service, I'm not exactly sure how to close, but I'm just so thankful for all of you having open arms and allowing me even to feel like I'm able to be up here and speak, because that's a huge step for me. And Thank you, God. That's all I have.